You're listening to The Murder in My Family, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including Missing Persons, DNA ID, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime, 3 Men and a Mystery, and All Things Crime. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
The views and opinions expressed by guests on this podcast do not necessarily represent those of the podcast, its host, or sponsors. If you would like to discuss the murder in your family on this podcast, please be sure to visit themurderinmyfamily.com for more information. You can support this podcast by visiting patreon.com/themurderinmyfamily. This episode may contain unsettling material or subject matter. Listener discretion is advised.
Welcome back to The Murder in My Family, and Happy New Year. I'm your host, Mike Morford. In this episode, I'll be covering an Australian case in which a man was killed by someone he considered a friend. That friend, as it turned out, was a ruthless criminal. We'll get into this case after some quick housekeeping. Independent podcasts like this one depend on word of mouth to bring in new listeners. So if you find that you enjoy this show, please take a minute to rate and review it wherever you listen to your podcast. And be sure to introduce a friend to the show and invite them to listen. With your help, The Murder in My Family can continue to grow and reach a new audience. To learn more about the show or the cases we discuss, please visit themurderinmyfamily.com. You can also find us on Twitter with the handle @MurderInMyFam, or by searching for the Murder in My Family podcast on Facebook. If you'd like to support this show through a Patreon donation, it's always appreciated, and you can do so by visiting patreon.com/The Murder in My Family. Benefits of supporting the show on Patreon include early access to ad-free episodes of the show, plus bonus content not heard in regular episodes. Support may also include thank you cards, stickers, and more. If you prefer to, you can also support the show through a PayPal donation by visiting paypal.me/The Murder in My Family. In each episode, I'll give shout-outs to any new supporters. And thank you to all the supporters that generously donate to help keep the show growing and improving. One last note. Please consider supporting any of the sponsors that you hear on The Murder in My Family, the way that those sponsors support the show. It's with our sponsor support that the show can go on and continue to provide a platform to share these stories with you in every episode. Thank you. And now on with the show. Baghdad, Australia is a small town about 23 miles north of the larger capital city, Hobart, in Tasmania. The island of Tasmania is about 150 miles south of the easternmost part of Australia's larger mainland. Baghdad is where Brendon Roy Marriott called home. Brendon was the youngest of 3 children. Growing up, he was like many boys and young men with a love of outdoors, motorcycles, fast cars, and drag racing. He loved working on cars and even traveled to the U.S. to purchase a 57 Chevy. Later, his pride and joy would become a 67 Chevy Impala. Brendon, who was a mechanic, had a shop of his own, but he hadn't been working steadily for a while and was receiving disability benefits. Brendon was a family-oriented man, and he had 2 children, a daughter and a stepdaughter, and in 2010 became a grandfather for the first time. But before he could really enjoy that new role, the 41-year-old's life was cut short. At around 6 p.m. on December 1st, 2010, Brendon spoke with his daughter on the phone. They were both in the same home they lived in together later that night, but their paths didn't cross because Brendon arrived home at 10 p.m., and they didn't see each other before his daughter left for work around 9 a.m. the next morning. And no one saw or heard from Brendon after that night. His family was worried and shocked over his disappearance, and for a while it seemed as if he was simply a missing person with not many clues to go on. However, in February 2011, Tasmanian police had reason to believe that Brendon Marriott had been the victim of a homicide. A task force was created to investigate the possible murder. Phone records showed that Brendon made hundreds of calls every month, but there was no activity since December 2nd, 2010. There's also been no activity on his bank card since that time. The investigation revealed that a man named Noel Allen Percy, who was a friend of Brendon's, actually went to My State Credit Union, pretended to be Brendon, and got into his account. Over 8 transactions in February and March 2011, he withdrew $5,326 from Brendon's disability payments. This was a serious red flag to investigators. A couple weeks later, on March 28th, officers of Tasmania Police arrested Noel Percy and seized 2 firearms, 2 silencers, and a Honda and Chevy, both belonging to Brendon, during a search of Percy's residence. His home at 427 East Baghdad Road was very close to Brendon's workshop, where Brendon kept his cars. A spent .22 caliber shell was found at the back of the home, and police didn't wait long to arrest Percy, but he denied any wrongdoing. He was charged with killing Brendon Roy Marriott. Associates of his, including his wife Shelley Percy and his mistress Anna Lice Olding, were both charged with perverting justice and failing to report a murder. Shelley was charged with manufacturing a drug for sale, and Anna for selling a controlled substance. On March 31st, 2011, authorities announced the discovery of possible human remains at Percy's home, and it was on this date that Percy began to open up to Tasmanian police. He admitted that he did know Brendon and claimed that the two of them had been making speed together for a few years. Speed is another name for methamphetamine, an illegal stimulant. According to Percy, Brendon would give Percy the supplies he needed to make the speed, and then Percy would give the finished product to Brendon. Percy claimed that he wanted to stop making drugs, but Brendon made it clear that he wanted him to continue. Percy eventually stated that Brendon showed up to his home while his wife Shelley, his children, and his godchildren were there. Percy stated Brendon threatened to, quote, chop up his family if he didn't continue the drug making. He also claimed that Brendon was holding an axe that he had taken from the Percy's carport as he threatened him, and that he seemed high on something. He claimed Brendon was acting like a crazy man trying to get into their house. So Percy tried to stop him by waving his gun and threatening to shoot. But Brendon was undeterred. That's when Percy fired the gun directly at Brendon. Tests confirmed the spent .22 caliber casing found at Percy's home was fired out of the gun that he said he shot Brendon with. After Percy shot Brendon, he called his wife Shelley, along with Anna Lice Olding, and informed each of them that he had killed Brendon. Percy then reportedly drove to Anna Olding's home and told her in person, along with her teenage cousin, that he had killed Brendon with a .22 caliber rifle. Anna relayed to police that Percy told her that Brendon had been shot in the back of the head. She also revealed more. Percy had asked Anna's cousin, Ethan, for a gun before December 2010. Ethan bought a rifle from someone and gave it along with ammo to Percy. And it was around this time that Percy told Ethan, along with Anna, that he was going to kill Brendon because of how much money Brendon owed him. Percy also told Anna that Brendon had ripped them off more than once over the years. When Percy came to her home after he killed Brendon, he drove Anna back to his house and showed her a pile of wood stacked in a ditch behind his house. He said to her, "That's where he is." Despite claiming self-defense, Percy said that he didn't call police because he didn't want to go to jail. Instead, he panicked, burning Brendon's body, and collected what remained into a bucket, which he took to Anna's house, and told her to put it in her garage and to keep her child and dog away from it. On March 6, 2011, Percy had taken a flight to Queensland, Australia. 2 days later, when his wife called and told him that the police were searching their home, he told her to get rid of things connected to Brendon and to the speed manufacturing. He then called Anna and told her to dump the bucket into water. Anna followed his orders and dumped the bucket of Brendon's remains into a local river. Police during an investigation had tapped Anna's phone, and she talked about this trip to the river during a call that was monitored. She used the term, taking our friend for a swim. 3 days after she disposed of the remains, the police seized her car and found the bucket that contained Brendon's remains. Tests confirmed that it at some point had contained both teeth and bone fragments, and Percy's fingerprints were found on both the inside and the outside of the bucket. Shelley Percy told the Tasmania police that her husband disposed of Brendon's remains north of Baghdad, off the Midlands Highway. She took officers to the exact spot, and while bone fragments consistent with the skull were found, anthropologists couldn't confirm that they were human. Police also found that Percy had moved Brendon's Jayco caravan from his workshop to another property and moved his Chevy to his home in Baghdad. Percy planned to sell the Chevy in Sydney, pretending it was his. Using the money, he planned to buy a Harley Davidson. In May 2011, there were news reports of a fourth person charged in relation to Brendon's murder, but the articles didn't reveal the person's name because it was a minor who was 16 years old. And he was charged with being an accessory after the fact of murder, along with unlawful trafficking of firearms. It seems likely that this unnamed person is probably Ethan Olding. Brendon's family was patiently waiting, hoping that justice was coming, and that Noel Percy would pay the price for what he had done to Brendon. But Noel Percy found a way to evade justice. On Sunday, May 6, 2012, the 40-year-old was found dead in his cell at Risdon Prison Complex. He had taken his own life by hanging himself. On December 21, 2012, Anna pleaded guilty to all charges in the Supreme Court of Tasmania and was sentenced to 30 months in prison, with no possibility of parole for 15 months. On June 6, 2013, Shelley Percy was convicted on all charges and sentenced to 15 months in prison, with no parole possibility for 7.5 months. Not very long sentences, it seems like, for being involved in a murder. Though Brendon's body was never found or examined, in 2014, Coroner Rod Chandler declared that Brendon was killed by multiple gunshot wounds to the head and chest. 39-year-old Noel Percy was named as Brendon's killer. According to the record of investigation into Brendon's death, Noel Percy shot Brendon multiple times with a .22 caliber rifle on or about December 2, 2010. Brendon had his faults, and he got mixed up in some bad stuff with some bad people. But he didn't deserve to be murdered at the hands of his friend, and for his body to be destroyed to hide evidence of the crime, robbing Brendon's family of a proper goodbye, a memorial, or a funeral. Brendon's death has haunted his sister Katrina, and she misses her brother dearly. Katrina sat down with me to talk about Brendon's case. That conversation is coming up in just a moment. In the era of one of the most heinous serial killers of all time, one murderous crew went curiously unnoticed. The McCrearys committed countless abductions, murders, robberies, and created general mayhem everywhere they went. Families Who Kill: The Donut Shop Murders is a true crime miniseries that follows a family who banded together to terrorize small-town America, embarking on a brutal crime spree that captivated a nation. Led by the criminal duo of Sherman and his son-in-law Carl, this disturbed family targeted people working night shifts in donut shops. In the Donut Shop Murders, you'll hear the details of their story for the first time from one of the McCrearys and the detective who tracked them across the country as they left death and destruction in their wake. You'll love the detail that Families Who Kill: The Donut Shop Murders goes into. Follow Families Who Kill: The Donut Shop Murders on Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, or you can binge all 6 episodes ad-free by subscribing to Wondery Plus in Apple Podcast or the Wondery app.
My name is John Lorden, and I've been looking into hundreds of unsolved mysteries over the past 5 years on my YouTube channel, Lorden Arts. And I've been known to bring a respectful, victim-focused approach to the stories that I cover while donating thousands of dollars directly to those cases and the charities that help them. Now, I'm bringing that approach and sensibility, along with some of the biggest mysteries I've ever looked into and some new ones, to a weekly podcast called Seriously Mysterious. From bizarre occurrences to unsolved murders and unexplainable disappearances, everything is fair game on this show as long as it's seriously mysterious. You can find Seriously Mysterious on your favorite podcatchers or by visiting seriouslymysterious.com. Let's look into the mysterious together.
Hi, Katrina, and thank you for coming on The Murder of My Family to discuss your brother Brendon's case with us.
Yeah, thanks, Mike. Thanks for having me.
And your brother's case is the first one that I'm covering out of Australia. I've covered a couple cases in Canada and obviously in the States, but I've never had a case that I've talked about on the show from down under. So we're breaking a little bit of ground here. And unfortunately, the subject matter of bad people doing bad stuff and people losing family members is doesn't have any borders. So, this is a worldwide phenomenon, unfortunately.
Yep, I'm hearing you exactly. That's what I'm telling people as well. There is no geographical borders.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we all, doesn't matter where you are, we can try and protect it as much as what we can. So I'm happy to tell you a little bit about my little part of the world, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, one thing we want to point out is that your brother's life ended at the hands of a pretty bad person. Before we get into the details of what happened to him, can you tell us a little bit about your brother Brendon and some of your memories of him?
Yeah, look, I can. I'll just to set the scene, because you've opened up about Australia, I suppose I'll just quickly mention I live in a little island state, Tasmania, off the main island of Australia, and that is where the Port Arthur massacre happened. And I don't know whether that's something that you're aware of, but that was a lone gunman. Now, it wasn't my brother's case, but what happened with that, it was in a tourist place with a lot of people from all over the world were visiting. A lot of deaths occurred, and our Prime Minister at the time bravely went in and changed the laws around gun ownership. And so that meant for us in Australia, throughout the whole of our country, amnesties, buybacks of guns, very different to what it is in the States. I'm saying that, however, and my brother's murder did occur at the hands of a gun. So it is not as frequent to purchase or to get, but, people that are determined can do that. So I just thought in context that might explain a little bit. We're supposedly one of the safest places in the world here, but hey.
And I guess if bad people want to do bad stuff, they're going to find a way to get their hands on guns and stuff.
So we grew up in a family of 3 children and mum and dad. He was the youngest, so there's 4 years difference between him and myself. And we had another brother, and they grew up the best of mates. 2 boys and 1 girl in the house, so they grew up to be boys, cars, motorbikes, BMXs. They had all of that in common. Brendon was a really quite shy sibling, and I suppose that he didn't talk for, a little bit after. Thinking he might have been 2 or 3 or something before he just started to talk, but maybe he was just taking it all in from his older siblings. He grew. I mean, we lost our father when I was 12, so Brendon would have been 8, and he died suddenly of natural causes. And so in a way, Mum struggled with that, and I became the bigger sister, come second mum. And his love for cars grew into drag racing. He could always fix anything mechanically, and we always had a joke in our family that my other brother, who was named John, he would destroy any vehicle or any bike, and Brendon would come along and fix it. So they both enjoyed. Brendon and John together went to the US, and they purchased 2 57 Chevys, which they brought back to Australia.
Wow.
And they did that together, and that was Brendon's pride and joy. One, I think, ended up becoming parts for the other. He was a mechanic, but it was mainly hotted up cars that he would fix, so he was really gifted in that. He actually had 2 children, a stepdaughter, and then he had his own child. Now she was the first grandchild for Mum, so he had her early, a young dad. But he was very, very loyal to his family, and he'd just become a young grandfather actually, a couple of months before his murder. So, and another girl, but yeah, so unfortunately he didn't get to spend much time with her.
Was he excited about having a grandchild?
He was excited about that. It came, it's horrible to say, it came with a double-edged sword though, because the mother of, she was his ex-partner, but the mother of the two girls, not a very nice lady, and definitely in an off relationship. They weren't together, but she had been charged with domestic violence against him, so she was the perpetrator, but that meant that she was still connected and was still stalking him and still making things very demanding on him. So although it was an exciting time, it was also a tough time because of that.
So not a healthy relationship, it sounds like.
No. Like, you know, it was really horrible, and to see that happen. I mean, originally, he was charged for domestic violence, and we just had new laws come into play in Tasmania. And what had happened was he then fought those charges, but they took 2 years to clear him, because they had arrested him as the perpetrator on her say-so, with absolutely no evidence. But, you know, it was just horrible to see her turn to that extent. I mean, yeah, I convinced him to sell his home to try and, you know, to pay her out, start a new life and all those sorts of things, which she did do. Yeah, but she just had this hold over him, which was really, really tough. But yeah, which I think, which it's horrible to say, but morally, I still feel as though she was responsible in some way for his death, because he wasn't in a great state of mind.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So did he, it sounds like maybe from some of the research and stuff that maybe he got mixed up with the wrong crowd or some bad people?
Yeah. And look, throughout his whole life, he was never a great judge of character. I have to say that he accepted everybody, and he was very black and white. So he never saw things with any grey areas. He never introduced me to the person who would end up murdering him, and he never ever mentioned his name. I also didn't know, but I had to accept and come to terms with that he must have started using drugs. The person who did kill him lives not far from where he then purchased a block of land and a shed that he was going to build on, and he bought that because it was out a little bit of away from town, and it had a big shed so he could store his beloved cars in it, and then he could build and restart his life again. But yeah, he met this person, and you know, that person must have introduced him, I'm guessing, to the drug scene. So yeah.
And unfortunately, that's another issue that doesn't have borders. That's a problem all over the place, and it affects a lot of people.
It does, and it's a tough one to come to terms with, because he must. Well, we can only guess that he started taking meth, and it just got a hold of him very, very quickly. And apparently he owed. This was one of the stories. He owed the murderer money.
So it came down to some kind of feud over money. And, you know, it was actually, you know, we're talking right around December 2nd, which is the anniversary. It was, 11 years ago that this happened to your brother. How did that day unfold? How did things go, as far as you know, that led to this happening to where your brother was killed?
So today in Australia, it's the 3rd of December, so we're one day on from an anniversary as such. Hard to know because of the circumstances around the murder. And we can only go, apparently he told at least 5 different stories to police. He did confess in the end, but we didn't know, and it wasn't uncovered. His death wasn't uncovered until 27th of March the following year. So what we're told, what we're told is that it's on or about the 2nd of December. That was when he was murdered, because that's when phone calls stopped. That's the last time anybody saw him. I can only guess that he was lured to the property and then murdered. We've been told it was execution style, that there were multiple gunshots. Just
brutal attack. And correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't this man that took your brother's life, didn't he try and say it was self-defense?
Yeah, that was. Well, you look about it now, it was absolutely hilarious to say that, because he came up with this story that my brother went to his place with an axe and he was going to hurt his family, but that was at his back door. Now they found no axe, and my brother was a big guy, like he was over 6 foot and not skinny either. So for somebody by himself to have then accidentally shot him that many times and then pulled him, a fair way down where they found where he'd set up a bonfire of tyres to completely destroy his body. There's no way it would have happened, and police said there's absolutely no evidence that your brother was in any way, shape or form going to harm him. It was all just part of trying to get out of a murder.
So he's basically made up some kind of story, and that's what he told police.
Yeah, well, that was one of the stories, and that was the one that he was going to go to court with, even though they'd charged him with murder, until he realised, I believe his solicitor, his lawyer even said to him, there's no way you can plead self-defence. There's no way you can plead not guilty. And he suicided in custody that weekend.
So, he shot your brother first off, 5 times? Which it doesn't sound like typical self-defense, but then even if his story was true and he was defending himself, why wouldn't he call the police? Why did he burn your brother's body? That just sounds like a cover-up, like he's trying to hide things. It doesn't sound like a very good story, and I guess that's what his attorney figured out too.
Yeah, I would say so. And it wasn't just the fact, completely destroy his remains, as in they only found 3 facial bones that they could identify as human, and they couldn't even confirm that they were Brendon's through DNA. He was caught on tape talking to his mistress about taking my brother for a swim in the river, and it's pretty gruesome, and she had a bucket of some of his remains in her house. I don't know what sort of mentality.
It sounds like a very disturbing situation.
Yeah, and so she answered back and told him that she'd taken him for a swim. And so when police got hold of the bucket, they could determine that remains had been in there that were, like teeth and things like that. Like that's, yeah. And they had a lot of the talking evidence between the murderer, his wife, and his mistress. So, So there were 4 people charged when it came to light, and it only really came to light because police were investigating my brother's murder for drug manufacturing and drug dealing charges, and somebody within that inner circle must have said, hey, this guy's going around saying that he's murdered Brendon and we haven't seen him about, so you might want to check that out.
They started poking around, and that's how they figured out that this man had done that.
Yeah, and they were, they massive, cadaver dogs and emergency personnel trying to find his remains after it became clear that it happened, but they had so much discussions on tape as well, and that was the other thing that really didn't make any sense when, the murderer tried to go for self-defense. He came up with this elaborate concept that he was sick of my brother because my brother was making him make drugs, and he needed to make more drugs to keep my brother happy. But the investigation into him didn't happen until way after my brother's death. So if that was really the case, he wouldn't have kept manufacturing and dealing drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So it was really quite,
how did?
Yeah, and just.
I'm sorry. I was going to say, how did your family deal with, not just that your brother was taken from you, but that he was taken in such a terrible way and just basically made to disappear?
Look, it was tough. I don't even to say, like from the 2nd of December, we had absolutely no idea. Something didn't feel right. Like, I'm a mum, married, 3 young children, had another brother at that stage, and myself and my brother were saying, have you heard from him? And I'm going, no, have you heard from him? And it was just like we kept phoning and he wasn't answering. And our mum had passed the previous year, and he had promised he would, because I had to go and look for him when mum passed, because he was back with the ex at that stage. But he said, no, I promise I'm always going to stay in touch. I'm always going to be here. That I'm always here for you. And we couldn't understand why he wasn't contacting us. And this time of the year, we just sort of moved on. Holiday time came, but I still felt something was wrong, but I had no idea that this was what it was. And then on the night before the news broke, I had the worst night's sleep I think I've ever had in my life. And I mean, talking about, I'd lost my dad and my mum way before their time, but there was something so dark and something so foreboding that I couldn't put my finger on it. And I was actually going up to a work celebration at the other end of the state, so about 3 hours drive away. And I even said to my hubby, look, I don't know whether I feel like I'm going to be in a car accident and I'm going to die today. And I know that sounds really bizarre, but I just had this real darkness come over me. And he was just like, well, don't go then. Don't, and I went, oh, yeah, but people are relying on me to go, and I'm supporting a couple of other community members to go up. So, yeah, I don't know, it'll be fine, So we travelled up to the celebration and had the phones off and attended that. It was a big to-do. It was, government officials there. Got back in my car and I noticed I had missed phone calls on my work phone and my private phone. My auntie had been in hospital, so I was just thinking, oh, no, 'cause my cousins had phoned, maybe she's gone. So I tried to ring them back. They didn't answer. And then my male cousin phoned me back, and he just blurted out, well, no, he actually asked me to pull over on the side of the road if I was driving. And I said, no, I'm not driving. I'm I'm a passenger in the car. And he just said, I've just been hearing this on the radio all day, Katrina, like, you know, is it true? And then he just said his name, Brendon Roy Marriott, just like that. And he said, that's him, isn't it? And that was his way, because he was in complete shock, because he knew, like, my brother's middle name was our shared pop's name. So, yeah, there was no doubt, but I think we were just in total shock to find out that way.
I was going to say, you had some kind of, like, almost a premonition, it sounds like.
Yeah. It was just, I had no idea what it was, only that, like, something really, and that hasn't happened to that extent ever before, and it hasn't happened since.
So you had to learn all these details, and then came the time that, okay, they don't believe this guy, Noel Percy, the man that did this, and they arrest him, and you're waiting for this to go to trial so he can, you know, be held accountable and you can get justice, and then he robs you of that as well.
Well, yeah, and because, I mean, I was quite proactive, because proactive with police and the legal team and everything like that. I must say they were magnificent. Like, you know, if I go back to the 28th of March, when I got that phone call, the people that I were with actually said, let's pop into the police station. We popped into this tiny little police station, the north of the state. It was so small that we had to wait outside. We couldn't fit inside. And there was 4 of us until they came out, and, you know, I went in and blurted out, apparently my brother's been murdered and nobody's told me. Can you confirm it? And they were just like, what? Well, it's all over the radio, you know. And anyway, so we waited for the detectives to come on the phone while we just sat there in stunned silence. And from that moment on, they were fantastic. Like, they apologised. They'd told my brother's stepdaughter. They just said, they just didn't know. And I said, well, there's me and my other brother. Like, you know, maybe they left it up to his stepdaughter, but she had phoned us that next day at the end of the day. Anyway, so she must have been either trying to phone our number or in complete shock as well, I would say. What happened with that after the arrest, because they did arrest 4 people, there was a minor who had purchased the gun and given it to Percy, and then Percy's wife and his mistress were also charged, and they ended up, well, the charges were only failing to report a killing and drug charges. So I can only assume, I don't know the circumstances of why it went to that. Definitely received goods, my brother's possessions and things as well. But yeah, so Percy I didn't go to any of the pre-trial stuff because the legal people just said, look, you don't need to, it's just a hearing. Wait for the trial, which I did. And so still to today, this person is a faceless name. I have no idea what he looks like. But yeah, he suicided in custody prior to the trial. So no legal justice.
Do you feel, I mean, obviously he can't hurt anyone now, but, it doesn't give you any, justice, as you just said. Do you feel that you were robbed, or do you take some kind of comfort in knowing that he's not going to hurt anyone else?
Well, it's been a roller coaster ride, to be honest. In the beginning, I felt so alone, and as I said, I've been proactive. I desperately wanted to know why. None of it was making any sense in my mind, why somebody would do what he did, and not just murder him, but he took his identity. He actually had fake identities made. He took his money from his bank account. He took over his prized 57 Chevy, and he took his son to his leavers dinner or, formal graduation in my brother's car just after he did it. They then moved a washing machine into my brother's shed because he had better water pressure. They then did drug deals for my brother's home. He visited my stepdaughter, my brother's stepdaughter, and asked for the rest of his possessions, which she gave him. One was including a new phone that she bought him. And that phone he gave to his mistress because she wanted something. And my his stepdaughter was to say afterwards, he rocked up in the car that was hers that she'd loaned to stepfather. And they had my brother's personal mementos, his photos and everything sitting in their bedroom. He'd taken them and they were sitting in his bedroom. So it was just, I don't know what else there was to even to try and make sense of. So when he did suicide, I did feel robbed of knowing, of trying to understand it and knowing why and what had happened. I also felt on a human level, here's this man that's got children. And on a human level, I felt sick for them. But I think when my brother and other close friends were saying, look, no, this is bittersweet, you're not going to be subjected to that circus that goes along with a trial. You weren't going to know the truth anyway. It was only going to be whatever came out of his mouth. And then they were saying things. I'm just thinking what else they were saying. Oh, my children who dearly love their uncle were 7, 10 and 17. And my youngest son, he all of a sudden, I can't remember, I'd find toy guns planted throughout the house and the garden because he was thinking he had to protect himself, I'm assuming. And when I told them, the kids were just so relieved that he wasn't about to hurt anybody ever again. And because of the depravity of what he did, I just thought there's no way this is the first time he's done something like this, or if it would be the last. It really wasn't just I've killed someone and off I go. It was, I'll make sure that. Now I actually think I'm relieved, and now I know I don't have to worry about. I don't have to look over my shoulder and that he's going to be on parole. I don't have to deal with that.
Yeah.
So I had to come to terms with legal justice was what just one part that we had to wipe away, as well as, the normal things about being able to bury a body and all of that just had to go. Okay, can't do that either. That's just another one that we can't do.
Sure. And now you've been without your brother now for, as we mentioned, 11 years. What's been the hardest part, and what do you miss most about your brother?
Oh, just his... Look, it's all been hard. All been hard, especially, as I said, the children were so young at the time and balancing that, what we tell them. Well, they were very different ages, between 7, 10 and then 17. So between what you tell them, what you don't tell them, and then having it revisited as they, Google things and find things out, or an article appears in a magazine or a newspaper article that we didn't know was coming out. For me, but I suppose I threw myself into work, so that helped me going, and I'm very proud of who they are now, because I know we worked through it beautifully as a family, and they're really thriving as I am now, but we've obviously still got that grief and shock that will always be there, but we've changed from what we would have been without it, put it that way. Sorry, I got off topic. What do I miss the most? His cheekiness. He lived a little bit away from me, not in the same suburb, but I would come home from work some days and I'd go, oh, Brendon must have been here fixing his car, because there'd be oil over the driveway, or there'd be water things, sitting there, and tools tinkered around. But he wouldn't message me to tell me he'd been. or you just go, oh, I message him and go, oh, so you've been up, been up here today or whatever. Oh, yeah, thought I'd call him. And just I think one of our most special moments of the family happened the year before, and that was when our eldest daughter graduated from high school, and he took her to her formal in his 57 Chev, and it was a really special moment for us as a family to celebrate that. And I've got this beautiful photo of him out of the car in the crowd watching her as she's taking centre stage beside his car, and all beautifully dressed up. And as I said, he's in the crowd and he's got on shorts and a T-shirt, hands in his pocket, and a very proud uncle. So we missed that opportunity for our other two children to have that, because now they're 21 and 18, so they've had their formals, and that they haven't been able to replicate that same joy, I suppose. And knowing that, Percy took his son to his formal in that same car just really taints it.
It comes full circle almost.
Yeah, it does come full circle, but now we really celebrate, and we often see signs that he's around us, and we all click onto them as a family, the funny ones. If I just share this little one of what happened last night. So it was, the anniversary, one of his anniversaries yesterday. And so couldn't really be bothered cooking dinner. And I just thought, why don't we just go and get takeaway? We had a massive storm here, so we were going to get KFC and didn't. And so I just went, look, we're just going to go to the local fish and chip shop. And so I did, and took everybody's order. And I'm sitting there waiting in this local fish and chip shop, and I waited over an hour, which which is crazy. And I'm thinking, what's going on here? I've got my order. So I go up and I say to them, like everybody else has come in and gone, like what's happening with mine? And I don't know whether the wind or whatever, but she found it and it had been blown off from where the orders were. And they really apologised and then said, look, yours is coming right now. I sat down in this little fish shop and I was close to tears, because I was just like, all I wanted to do was get fish and chips, go home and be with my beautiful family, celebrate my gorgeous brother, and just have that alone time. And yet I've had to sit here and wait. And then I was thinking, oh, this is the same fish and chip shop that he used to ride his bike down to when we were kids. And that was, I thought, I'm going to be a mess in this fish and chip shop. Anyways, they called me over and my order was finally there. And the girl just looked at me, because I was thinking, I really want to say, look, I'm really not in a good space. You've made me wait all this time and blah, 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 blah. But I never said anything. And then she just pulled out the till, gave me $50 cash back, which is basically what I'd paid for the fish and chips order, and just said, we're so sorry. And that was it. So I got in my car to come back, and I just thought, yeah, Brendon, thanks for that, mate.
Wow.
I would like to think that was his cheekiness. That was him going,
yeah,
here you go.
Yeah, just giving you a little bit of a hassle. Well, and it also sounds like that, you were a little bit upset because it was the anniversary. So even after all these years, it hasn't gotten all that much easier on you.
It has got a lot easier than the early days, and I think you just work on that. Especially, you've got to push through. That's all you can do. Especially with all those other hurdles in the way, and whatever you think life was like beforehand, I think our lives definitely changed on the 28th of March. Like, it's almost like a before and after period of your innocence is gone. Yeah. You mean, there's evil in the world, but you don't. It's not sitting in your backyard, and then all of a sudden it's thrown in your face.
Yeah, it always happens to someone else until it happens to you.
Yeah, and you empathise with other people, and you think you understand, but boy, yeah, well, it's a total different thing when you're thrown into it.
Yeah. Well, I can't thank you enough for coming on and sharing your journey and helping us understand a little bit Brendon's case and discussing what happened to him. And, I wish there was something I could say that would make it more that justice was served here, but there no justice here, it seems. And you're out of brother.
Justice of another kind. And I suppose to make matters worse, I did lose my other brother a couple of years after, but that was to cancer, and I often say it was to cancer or a broken heart, because that was tough going on him as well. But yeah, thank you. And if I could just say as well, it has been 11 years, and it's only now I didn't realise there were support groups out there to reach out to, and so I have set up my own support group online as well, for anybody that's lost a loved one to murder, and that's just to know that you've got some support there. And I've recently just thrown in my full-time employment actually, and going to use my coaching and lived experience and my career experience just to provide some coaching, survivor to thriving, for those people that are, once they're past their dark stage, and are thinking, okay, what now can I do? What now can I do to honour myself and my loved one and, live a purposeful life? And so I'm doing that now as well. So that's really rewarding.
Yeah.
It's well, always knowing that you can help people.
It's always moving to hear people that are gone through something terrible like this, that are using their experience to help other people that are in the same boat.
Yeah, it is. And I've been it's been very heartwarming after all the, I don't think I was in a space to do it before. I just basically woke up one day and went, it's now or never. This is what I'm going to do. And it just felt like everything fell into place to go, wow, okay, this is it. Let's give it a go.
Yeah. Never too late to try and help someone else. And where can people find your group, or are you on social media? Is there a place they can come, a website or Facebook page?
Yeah. It's just Facebook at the moment, and it's called Murder Trauma / Survivor to Thriving. So, people can, it's completely free to join in the Facebook group. I haven't really been pushing the business side of it yet, because I've just been enjoying the setup and the support of that. But, I've got a free course coming up next week, a free little mini course. Check that out on Facebook. I'm really proud that it's a really welcoming community, and it's a really safe place for people to speak their mind and not be judged. And if they're feeling frustrated or they're having a bad day, they can reach out, and other people within the group are finding their own purpose and reaching out and responding and being able to help it. And that's across, it transcends borders. I had a chat the other day, and we had people on from Australia, US, and the North Pole. I was pretty excited about the North Pole. So there you go. As you said, murder doesn't have borders.
Well, I think you're doing some good work, and hopefully, if anyone out there, can get some advice from you, or maybe needs a place to turn, they'll check you out, and hopefully we could send some people your way. Again, Katrina, I can't thank you enough for coming on and discussing what you've gone through and Brendon's case with us.
Yeah, no, thanks very much, Mark.
Thank you once again for joining me for this episode of The Murder of My Family. I'd like to thank Sonny Landon for writing and research assistance in this episode. We'll be back here soon with an all-new episode of The Murder of My Family, and I hope you'll join me for it. But before you go, remember that every murder victim means something to somebody.